can be hard. And parenting a child who thinks or learns differently or who has social and emotional struggles has its own unique challenges. But there is so much joy in parenting, and parents often say they want to spend more time experiencing that joy. Well, that's where a coach can help. Today, my guest is Sari Goodman, a certified parent educator and trainer who is an avid cheerleader for the most significant people in a child's life, the parents. She supports parents and guardians by developing a comprehensive understanding of family dynamics to create a customized action plan that reduces chaos and brings calm. So, pause this recording, grab a cup of coffee or tea, sit in a comfy chair, and enjoy.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Sari. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Karen. Thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you, even though it's on Zoom.
I know. It seems like everything is on Zoom now. I think I have more conversations on Zoom than I have in person, unfortunately.
Feels normal. Isn't that funny how normal
That is so funny. That is so true. And it's like when people now say, do you want to meet up? It's like, are we meeting via Zoom or is this going to be a phone call? So we're normalizing this experience.
Yes.
But hopefully, I keep saying, hopefully we're turning a corner. We'll see, right?
Absolutely. Hopefully soon.
Well, I wanted to have you on the podcast because, as you know, we work with a number of kids with neurodevelopmental challenges and those with academic and social emotional difficulties. And in my work as a clinician, I'm making sure that everyone understands why a child is struggling and recommending the right supports that are put in place to help this particular child. But the parents of kids who think and learn differently are also navigating the academic, the social and emotional struggles alongside their kids. So I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk to you about the needs of parents, because this is where you work. You work in this space with coaching parents. And so I'm glad to begin this conversation with you and to be having this conversation with you.
Right, exactly. I think parents think about right now how under stress parents are, and add to it the finding of what they need to do in order to support their children. And the stress is just overwhelming and they need support. As an elementary school principal, I was finding I was spending more and more time with parents than teachers and children. And I would look at my schedule book and I would see parent, teacher, parent. And I would realize, wow, so many parents need support. That's how I now became a parent educator and coach, because I realized that there are parents who need support, not necessarily therapy, just parent support, someone to be in their corner just to help them navigate. And one of the subjects that I want to talk about is this feeling of when parents feel judged by either their parenting style or judged by their children's behavior. And then sometimes that fear of being judged may alter how they approach parenting.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about that because I want to give parents strategies to basically toughen up and be more on guard and be able to be the parent that they want to be without this extra stress of being judged.
Yes. And I think, you talk about the stress. Can I just say that parenting is hard?
Yes.
And right now we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and parenting in a pandemic is really hard. and no parent has a handbook, right? So we're kind of figuring this all out. We've been figuring this all out all along, and it can be quite isolating. And when you see, when you talk about parents feeling judged, I think about all those parents who are posting these perfect pictures of their families on social media. We're using this pandemic as a time of bonding. And other parents feel like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm really struggling with behavioral issues with my kid at home. I'm frustrated with what's happening in my home. And there might be even some shame about not being able to jump in and make things all better for their kids.
Well, I tell parents, be aware of the cover-up.
Tell me about that, what you mean by the cover-up.
That perfect parent picture, that's a cover-up, because all parents struggle and all kids have stuff. It's not unusual. But that perfect parent picture is really a way of parents covering up their own struggle. And you need to find the people that are willing to kind of admit and say, yeah, we're all having struggles. I know that I had been a teacher for 15 years before I had my child, and I thought, oh, easy, no problem. I got this. And then my son was born, and it was challenging, very challenging. And I learned a lot. But I did have a lot of knowledge behind me. And kids don't come with instruction manuals. And I think that there's this impression that everyone just knows how to parent because we've had parents for the millennium. And you're just supposed to know how to do it because kids, we all grew up somehow. But there's strategies and there's tools, and it doesn't have to be so hard.
And are there common themes that you are seeing, in working with parents that are coming up right now?
Right now, I think that juggling home and school and work is very hard. And this on school, off school, classes closed, back on without much warning is very hard. I think that people got into a rhythm when there was school at home. And then when school came back, people got somewhat their lives back. And now it's on life, off life. It's very hard. And I think that when I talk to parents about this, my advice is as much as possible, keep to the schedule. That means if your child is home and normally they would get up at 6:30 or 7, have breakfast, go to school, keep that schedule. That provides the children comfort. It also provides habit because they will go back to school in person and that habit will continue. But if it's a start again habit, stop again habit, it's no longer a habit. It becomes an argument or a struggle or everything becomes new again. You want to avoid that at all costs because that structure, structure provides comfort.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I feel like there are probably a number of parents who are listening to this and nodding because, you've described the situation that we've had to go through with this on again, off again, and it creates stress. And oftentimes parents have a hard time making good decisions when they are experiencing stress. And I think that's where a parent coach can be particularly helpful because they don't think about the importance of having a habit and keeping the structure. All they're thinking is, I was supposed to work tomorrow and now my kids are at home quarantining for 10 days. I'm just trying to survive at this point. And they may not think about the structure that's needed to provide that comfort. And again, that's when another set of eyes, another set of ears is so helpful.
I also find myself when I work with parents telling them what's normal. I think sometimes parents think, oh my goodness, my child is doing this. There must be something wrong. And I come in and say, really, that's normal. That's what kids do. We might not like it.
Right.
We might want to change it, but that's what kids do. And here's how we go about changing it. And I think that really helps parents be more calm. And that's what we need right now is calm. That's what's missing.
Right. And I think when you do that and when you say that, you're really normalizing some of the behaviors that we see. And obviously some kids have more struggles than others, but some of the behaviors are normal for kids of a particular age or boys of a particular age. And so that can actually decrease the stress that a parent is experiencing when they come to the realization that they are not the only ones who are dealing with this issue, this struggle, this frustration.
And that's why, as a parent coach, one of my big suggestions, my big strategies is for parents to gather their own little village. Find parents, family members, close friends, teachers, therapists, parent coaches, a little village that understand that everybody's doing the best they can, that has your back, that's able to tell you, it's going to be okay. I'm here for you. That's what we need. We don't need the Facebook pictures and the Instagram photos of perfect families. We need our little village. We need our people. And so that first thing is go find your people. Because when you have that, you have the confidence to try. I think with typical children and atypical and neurodivergent children, we have to try things. It might look different, but we have to be able to try things. Well, that takes a little bit of bravery. It takes a little bit of, I'm not going to worry what other people think if I try this with my child, because the therapist said this would be a good thing for this particular child. There's also normal for neurodivergent children. You know, some of the characteristics are, this is what we see. We have to do something about it, but this is what we see. And so therefore we might have to try things different, and different sometimes feels, you get judged by that. There was an interesting interview that I heard from Maggie Gyllenhaal. She has a movie that's out right now, and she was talking about motherhood, about being a mother. And she said something quite interesting. What she said was, if it meaning motherhood, doesn't fit inside the very narrow space that we've agreed we are allowed to talk about, then they say something's wrong with you. So I think she's saying that there's a very small, narrow idea of what is normal parenting. And if you do something different, people will say it's wrong. And if we follow that reasoning, how can we be creative? How can we be flexible? How can we use unique strategies? We have unique children. Every single child is different. Are we wrong? No. We need our village to let us know, we're here for you. Go ahead, try it. We'll be okay. We've got your back.
And that village is made up of parents who are all just trying to be the best parents that they can be. And they are trying different things, and they need support, because the struggles in one household will not be the same as the struggles in another. But the support is so important as you are navigating whatever struggle that might be and working to be, again, the best parent that you can be.
Right. And so parents that I work with can call me anytime, well, between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., not in the middle of the night, but they can call me, and that makes a very strong village when you know there's somebody that you can just call and say, help me. Am I doing this right? And I'll stay on the phone until the situation calms. And what I find is after a while, people don't call me. It's the knowledge they can call me.
Mm-hmm.
That gives them the opportunity. And it's the same thing with a best friend or a family member. It's that ability to call somebody and know that they'll pick up the phone and that they're just going to give you the confidence you need.
Mm-hmm. And are you seeing, you talked about kids who are neurodivergent, who think and learn differently, and the parents of those kids. I've sat down with so many of those parents who wonder, did I do the wrong thing? Right? Is this why my child is behaving this way? Did I not do something? Should I have seen something sooner? Should I have intervened sooner? Should I have been in this office sooner? And it feels like there's like a bit of guilt associated with those questions. And, they're worried about the decisions that they make and how that impacts the trajectory of their children's lives. Do you see that?
I see that parents are more judgmental on themselves than most people are, than anyone else. They judge themselves more harshly. And that causes unnecessary stress. And that's where we come in. I focus on the here and now. It is what it is. Let's look at what we have. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to handle it? Where do we go from here? Because that self-judgment or that self-recrimination, it freezes people from action. And we need to release them from that self-judgment so that they can move forward.
And what are some of those strategies? What do they look like for some parents? What have you found to be helpful? I know it'll differ depending on the parent and the struggle, but what are some strategies that have been helpful to some parents?
One strategy in just when I go into people's homes and I observe is when you're in the moment with your child, you're in the moment. You don't see the big picture, but I can see the big picture. So I'll go in and I'll say, you're reinforcing that behavior that you don't want. So this is what you're doing. It's making it happen more. Let's undo that. And I'll give parents a direction. It depends on the behavior. I'll give parents a direction on how to change that. Or one thing that I tell parents is a lot of times children act because that's what they've learned works.
Mm-hmm.
So if a child doesn't get what they want and starts screaming and then they get what they want, they've learned, screaming works. I'm going to do it every time. And that's what happens. So we have to take away what works and we have to exchange it with something else because children they will stop screaming. We just have to figure out a new strategy. As far as reducing stress and developing the village, there's a lot of judgment when you go to school. I know that parents aren't in school right now, but there's still Zoom and there's still play dates and there's still get-togethers and there's still that feeling of being judged. And one of my favorite strategies that I'll tell parents to do is hand out compliments. Compliment the parent. It was so nice of you to send pencils to everyone in the class this week. Or I heard your child did really well on the math test. You must be so proud. What compliments do, it have to be authentic, of course.
Right.
But what compliments do is it really lets down that wall that parents naturally have in protecting themselves, and they see you in a much more positive light. And guess what happens? They start complimenting you, and pretty soon you have a much more fluid, now you have people you can add to your village. Now you have people who aren't judging you as much because you're more seen as more of a team, more of an alliance.
And that alliance is so important. And it seems like it's even more important now because, we went through this period of where there was so much isolation and people didn't feel connected. Parents were at home with their kids trying to navigate pandemic learning and quarantine by themselves. And they couldn't connect with other families or other parents. But now we're finding that there are unique ways to do that. And it seems like what you're saying is that will alleviate stress. That will enhance connections with other parents, and you form your village, which is your support system.
Exactly. And quid pro quo, you need to be willing to join other people's villages, right? Other people need help too. And when you help someone else, your level of confidence grows tremendously because you're helping someone else navigate parenthood. And so that kind of support system within that you can get is what everyone needs. We're talking about mental health of students and parents, right? We've been hearing a lot about parent burnout. Well, yeah, when you don't get a lot of support and you're doing something that you've never done before and you're juggling things you've never had to before, you need that. And that's where you get from that village.
Yes, because that judgment piece that you were talking about earlier can really play a role in a parent's mental health. If you're feeling this way constantly and you feel that you're not being effective as a parent, that there's something you should be doing that you're not doing, but you don't know what it is that you should be doing. And that feeling of being judged, and you've talked about this, can actually diminish the confidence they have in their own parenting skills. And I'd love for you to talk about how, your confidence in your parenting skills impacts your ability to parent effectively.
I think that, when we have atypical children and neurodiverse children, a lot of times in the classroom, accommodations and modifications are what children need in order to feel successful in the classroom. So sometimes parents might question, well, if my child looks different, might they be judged? And that's a big fear. I saw that when I was principal. One example was oftentimes a child is sensitive to noise and sound, and noise canceling headphones and earplugs really help that child focus and participate in the class. And sometimes parents will say, no, I don't want that because it'll make them look different.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how, by the time a young child finishes 6th grade, think about how much learning or how many activities that child wasn't able to participate in because they didn't have the headphones. And think about how quickly maybe that issue, the child would have an opportunity to get more used to sound in a slow, steady way.
Mm-hmm.
Yet that difference, and what that quote I said from Maggie Gyllenhaal, that different is wrong and different makes judgment. And then parents might change how they approach school with their children. But if they feel confident and they say, every child is different, which every child is, yeah, I'm going to try that. And parents have tried that and it has worked and it's been very successful. Other kinds of suggestions, there's, luckily we know now there's 504s in public school where those are agreements between the public school and basically the parent and the child that they agree to make modifications and accommodations for the child. We need to accept it because every child is unique. It's not wrong to be different.
And I think that is so key. I think what you just said is absolutely key, is realizing and embracing difference. And in doing so, you do what's best for your child, regardless of what it might look like to someone else.
Exactly. And I think sometimes we think we're being judged and we're not.
Right. It's that sensitivity, right?
Right. I remember in my own case, I went to my child's 3rd grade back to school night. And I know that week he had told me he was sent to the principal's office. So I went to back to school night and the teacher is talking about the books and then she starts to talk about discipline and she says, sometimes I'm going to be sending children to the office. And she looked right at me. At least I was sure. She looked right at me. And it felt like that movie where the spotlight comes on your head and that's all you see. And I was sure everyone was looking at me and judging me. And after the meeting, I didn't hear anything else the rest of the meeting because I was so embarrassed. And I asked my friend, what do you think about what she, when she talked about sending kids to the office? And she said, what? She didn't even remember that part. It was such a minute little piece, but to me, it was everything. And I think that's sometimes we think we're being judged and we just aren't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just okay. And that's where your village comes in and says, you know what? Nobody noticed. It's just okay.
Right. And it's interesting when you gave that example, you talked about how you felt like the spotlight was on you and then you had a reaction to what the principal said. And then you don't remember what happened for the rest of the meeting. So it actually impacted your ability to take in more information that might have been helpful because you were caught up in this feeling of being judged and had this physiological reaction to it.
Right. I really tried to shrink. I tried to make myself as small as possible. And I do think that's sometimes what parents do is they try to shrink and blend in and make themselves as small as possible because of this, exactly what happened to me and exactly how I felt, as opposed to being there and saying, no, it's okay. This is my child. Yeah, my child got sent to the office. Guess what? It happens. Or guess what? My child disrupted the class. Okay, it wasn't great, but you know what? It happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move forward and then we see what are we going to do about it. And I can tell you that he was never sent to the office again because I took care of it. But
right. And that is the response you want from parents, to kind of accept it. It is, like you said, it is what it is. And you do whatever you can do to address the issue. Like you said, it never happened again, but you don't go in cover up mode like you talked about earlier, right?
Right. You don't shrink. You don't try to blend in. You try to say, okay, this happened. What am I going to do about it? Or here's the situation. What's the accommodation? What's the modification? How can I prep my child? For field trips, especially atypical children, depending on the field trip, that change in structure, of course, we don't do field trips right now, but we will again, I'm sure of it. Or even a special event in class, the structure changes. And some children need consistent, predictable structure. So what happens when there's a special event and there's a change in structure? Communicate with the teacher, remind the teacher, my child needs help when structure changes. So how can I prepare my child ahead of time? And let the teacher give you strategies and then work ahead of time. Be proactive.
And you know what? When you talk about that, I'm thinking that, when I'm writing these reports and I'm meeting with parents and oftentimes the focus is on providing accommodations and recommendations for the school in terms of what can they do to support my child so that they can be successful in their academic environment. But they're also, and I also put in the recommendations, things that parents can do to support their child. And oftentimes that helps parents feel, like you were saying, more confident in their own abilities and involved in helping their child and supporting them in the way that they need.
Right. When we had team meetings and when the therapists would come and the parents and we would discuss the strategies that will best help a child, I often interpreted it for parents at home. So, for example, let's say the accommodation was to chunk, give children a little bit of an assignment at a time because they could hear the middle or they could hear the end. They couldn't hear the whole part together. So I say it's the same at home. When you want children to do things, if that's what we need to do in school, then at home you need to chunk your directions. Don't give 5 directions. And sometimes what I find is people think one direction is one direction, but when you break it down, it's actually 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Go do your laundry, or go get ready to do your laundry, or go take a bath. You know how many steps there are in that?
Right.
There's a lot of steps. No wonder kids get lost on the way.
Right.
You have to chunk it.
And that's where that parent education piece comes in. And it seems like you're providing that parental support and that parental coaching, but you're also providing them with some education, some information about things that they may not be aware of, they may have overlooked, because you're taking your experience in an educational setting with respect to structure and accommodations and what works in the school setting to support kids and saying, this would also be helpful at home and this is how.
Yes. And I also give them strategies when I point these things out and teach them, these are strategies they use for the long term. It's not just once. It basically says, take a look at this. This is how I want you to look at this situation. More similar situations are going to come up in the future. So this knowledge, these strategies are for your lifetime parenting.
Mm-hmm. And I love the work that you do because it helps parents kind of navigate what feels like chaos and instead replace it with a feeling of calm. And then you also get this feeling of confidence and acceptance that is so important for any parent or any adult who's interacting with children.
Right. I'm not here to judge. I've seen a lot, and I've had my own struggles as a parent, so I get it.
We all have, right?
Yes.
We all have. And I think that's the big piece, is that you're normalizing it, that everyone is having struggles, has experienced some struggles as a parent. They may differ from parent to parent, but everyone has had them. So you're normalizing it, but you're making sure that you as a parent have the support that you need in order to be the best parent you can be.
Yes, that's what we want. We want them to be the best parent they want to be, and we want them to enjoy parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And we want their children to enjoy life.
Because that window of childhood is so short, right? Any parent knows that it goes by so quickly, and you really want to be able to look back at that time and really feel like that you enjoyed that time. You enjoyed being a parent to that child at that time. I mean, you're always a parent, but that time when they're 6 and they're 12 and they're 16, that you were present and that you felt good about your interactions with your child.
Right. And it wasn't always about consequences and arguing and why didn't you do this and what were you thinking? No, we will establish a structure. Sometimes people think structure feels like the army or feels punitive, but structure is there's the good structure. There's the predictability structure. I know when I'm going to be in trouble and I know what's coming next. And I remember a time when there were certain things that I didn't get upset over. I decided there were certain things I just wasn't going to argue over. And one of the things was when young children eat, they'll get their sleeves in their food and kind of make a mess on the table. And I said, that's one thing I'm just not going to argue over. And I bought my children very inexpensive clothes so that if it got stained or whatever, I didn't care. And one time, my child was over at another person's house and they said, oh, you got spaghetti all over your sleeves. Your mom's going to be mad. And he said, no, she's not. Because he knew.
Right.
On the other hand, if he hit his brother, oh boy.
That would be a different story.
That would be a different story. Then he would know. But it's that predictability that's calming. And it's a structure. It's a positive structure.
Absolutely. I had a similar experience with my kids. My husband bought these chairs for our kitchen that are fabric chairs and we have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and they're always spilling food. And I don't want to have this argument about being careful and watch yourself. I bought covers for the chairs so they could come off and I can stick them in the washing machine. And now I don't have to worry about it.
Right. There's enough it's hard enough. Can we eliminate some things from our parenting and let some things just go? And then we can really focus on what's super important.
Sari, this has been a great conversation. And I think I know it's going to help a lot of parents. And you've shared a lot about parent coaching, parent education. And if listeners want to know more about Parental Edge and seek you out for parent coaching, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, my email is sari@theparentaledge.com. And if they want, I have a list of what I call tactics parents can use to keep from feeling judged.
Good.
With some of the ideas that I gave here, and then there's more. And if they just want to email me, I'll send it out to them. I also have a website, theparentaledge.com.
Wonderful. And I will be sure to put this information in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today, Sari. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Sari is one of the incredible Child Nexus members we have in our community, members who are committed to providing support to parents and educators so that we can help all kids thrive. She is a parent coach. We also have occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, psychologists, neuropsychologists, educational therapists, educational specialists, all on the platform and ready to help your child or you. So make sure you go to childnexus.com and check out all the resources that we have and sign up for our newsletter so you can know when we are posting new podcast episodes or when we're holding town halls or webinars that might be of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.